We've all heard of the same shtick about video games cause violence. Not to stereotype, but it's usually espoused by politicians or older people, generally those who don't know or understand things about video games. But is there any truth to this? And before we delve into that, I just want to talk about the trouble that our brains have with quantifying danger or quantifying risk. I think it's fair to say that the majority of people will be more scared about plane transport than they are car transport. I mean, on the surface it seems obvious that these are big cylindrical metal tubes that are flying at like hundreds of miles an hour. Like, if something were to go wrong, it would go horribly wrong, wouldn't it? But that's not the truth. Whichever way you look at it, whether it be number of accidents or number of deaths in accidents, vehicular transport is way more dangerous than travelling by plane. In fact, you're way more likely to die on the way to the airport than you are in a plane crash. And I bring this up just to see how our brains skew information and how we can't just rely on what's in here to come to a complete conclusion. People still talk about the disappearance of flight MH370 to this day, but an accident down the motorway doesn't get a second look from us. So bringing this back to violence in media, people talk about things that are more violent than others, which, okay, but how do we quantify violence? I mean, it's not like, say, swearing, where you can count the individual times it's used and how severe each one of those times are.
Fuck, fucking fuck, ass. Yes. Balls, willy, shit and fuck and tits.
But violence on screen, how are you quantifying that? I mean, you can count individual acts of violence. Rambo III, released in 1988, was labelled the most violent film of all time by the Guinness Book of Records back in 1990. It had the on-screen deaths of 108 people, 70 explosions, and 221 individual acts of violence. But that being said, not all acts of violence are equal. Does a punch equal a gunshot? Does it count more if it kills them? What if you don't see it on screen? What if you only see the aftermath? What if there's little to no blood? If you're going to go by on-screen deaths, then that will make Return of the King the most violent film, which topped 836 on-screen deaths. But that's PG-13, so is it really that violent? Rating boards such as the BBFC keep things like that in mind when it comes to assigning a rating, especially when it comes to violence. There'll be more harsh things including drug use, suicide, self-harm, things like that. Actions that they believe are easily replicated by people will be put to a higher rating. So real-world violence would be rated a lot higher than, say, fantasy violence. So films like Taken will be given an 18 rating, however films like Star Wars will be given a U rating. But the purpose of an age-based system is to stop the young and the vulnerable from seeing things they probably shouldn't, while still allowing people who want to see it to see it. So what's this got to do with violent video games and films? I mean, it's natural to want a solution to things like gun violence or mass shootings. Who wouldn't want to stop that? You've got people in authority claiming that there is a link between the two. So if they are making those claims, they'll have some evidence, right? The ones behind the West Side Middle School massacre were players of GoldenEye 007, and those behind the Columbine High School massacre were players of Doom, both of which being first-person shooters. This led to an investigation that was later released in 2004 by the Secret Service and Department of Education, and it stated that only 12% of school shooters actually played video games, so really it didn't prove it, in fact it proved the opposite. In 2011, after a law was passed in California restricting the sale of violent video games to minors, it was later repealed, with the reason being it was unconstitutional. So even if there is a link between violent media and violent people, if it's not the violent media making the people more violent, then it's the other way around. It's the violent people who are getting more drawn to the violent media. The number of people who play video games is a little over 3 billion, so nearly half the world's population. Does that mean there are 3 billion mass shooters just hiding out among us? I'd say not. The first video game was a simple tennis game made in 1958, and as we all know, nothing violent ever occurred before 1958. But peer-reviewed studies just don't seem to mean much to some people. Kevin McCarthy said,
We've watched from studies shown before of what it does to individuals. When you look at these photos of how it took place, you can see the actions within video games and others.
Which made me think, what studies is he talking about? I did see this one study that was conducted in 2000, and it said that there was a link between violent media and violent behaviour, and that playing violent media, people more likely to experience violent impulses and act violent in the moment. Which, reading back at it, it kind of sounds what we would call nowadays as gamer rage. It says that it teaches people to find aggressive solutions to conflict situations, but it even states that more research should be done on this topic, calling it small and imperfect literature on video game violence effects. Now that study was done in 2000, a whopping 23 years ago. Now the thing is, many more studies have been done since that have come to the opposite conclusion, and in fact invalidated a lot of things that have been done in this study. And when it comes to academia, that you generally don't want to cite scientific papers that are older than 3 years old. Reason being, the more scientific papers are done, the better the methodology and the means of gaining information and data become. You rely exclusively on older information and methods, you're going to come to more inaccurate conclusions. So if a politician is cherry picking and citing one study that's quite old, that just shows that they don't know much about the topic to begin with. And some people say because you're the active participant in a video game, that's more likely to make you more violent as compared to a film or TV series where you're the passive viewer watching events that take place. Any violence in the video game, you yourself are committing. I like to compare two video games. Postal 2, a game that is banned in both Germany and New Zealand for its violent content, and Minecraft, the most popular game of all time, where you can do all sorts of violent acts in Postal 2, like blow people's heads off, burn them alive, urinate on them. You can actually complete the game without a single shot, hence the tagline, "You're only as violent as you want to be." In Minecraft, there's nothing stopping you from slaughtering any villager or passive mob that you see, but you could also not do that. You could trade with villagers, and you can eat without killing a single mob. There are vegetarian options in Minecraft, but to complete the game and free the end, you have to kill the Ender Dragon. In fact, to even get to the end, you have to kill blazes to get blaze rods. You can complete Postal 2 without killing a single NPC, but you can't do that in Minecraft. Does that mean Minecraft is more violent? Alright, it's a stretch. It's like comparing Tom and Jerry to Rambo. It's a bit silly, but where do you draw that line? Like I say, is it the violent media that's making people violent, or is it the violent people seeking out that media? If they're already violent, and if they're already going to commit violent acts, then the iconography is secondary to the actual act itself. Like, it was going to happen either way. Okay, but if we compare this to, say, an older film, let's say Birth of a Nation. It's a racist film that's pro-white supremacist propaganda, and it helped to revive the KKK. Now, I don't for a moment believe that Birth of a Nation made anyone racist. People who committed atrocities after watching it were racist before they watched it. It wasn't a subtle social commentary, it was a call to action. It told them a narrative that people already believed, made them feel right for believing it, and not challenge them. The difference between a film like that and films nowadays is that there's no real call to action, and a lot of narratives do challenge people. They do show protagonists with more of a grey moral compass. For example, Joker. We may sympathise with him and not like the ordeal that he does go through, but when he commits violent actions, we're definitely not supporting him. Well, the vast majority at least. But even if a small proportion of those actually cheer for the Joker, an even smaller portion of those might actually do similar things. So you can't really say it's a trend or even draw any sort of correlation, let alone causation. So what does cause all these violent acts? I mean, truth is, I don't know. And while the majority of these things tend to happen in America, the last thing the internet needs is another British person giving his unwanted opinion on America's poor gun laws. I mean, hey, we all laughed when Apple changed their gun emoji to a water pistol. But I mean, at least it's something. But when you boil it down, what it really is, it's a scapegoat. From rap music to rock music to Marxism to the internet to video games and films. So convenient that these things that these politicians already don't like are the causes of all these bad things happening in the world. Personally, I find it quite dangerous to find an external cause to a real problem that actually doesn't really solve anything. It's like, say you're a doctor and there's someone with a burst appendix and you try to treat it by trimming their toenails. The only way a film or a video game is going to hurt you is if it's going to fall from a 12-story window and hit you on the head. But it also dismisses and diminishes the evil it takes to kill another human being. Either they're believing what they're saying, which makes them idiots, or they're liars, which see the murders of innocent children in schools as an inconvenience more than anything. I know we've got parasites of our own, but come on, America, you can do a lot better. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry, I got a bit ranty there, but I just find it strange that this whole nonsense is still being parroted to this day. Like, I thought we'd passed it, but apparently not. If you have anything to add, please add it to the comments below. I'd like to hear what you guys think. And if I were to see, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.